Hey everybody, welcome to my very first live daily devotional. Uh, Much like I said, I will be reading about King David. I'll be reading about his battle with Goliath. I'll be going over uh, different things about it, and if anybody does join me, I will be answering any questions if anybody has any questions about anything. Um, let's get started. Uh, the scripture where this is going to be actually reading will take place in First Samuel chapter 17. Now the Philistines gathered together their armies to battle, and were gathered together at Shoko, which belongeth to Judah, and pitched between Shoko and Azarka in Infest Demon. I'm probably going to honestly butcher some of these words. So if I do, I'm sorry. And Saul and the men of Israel were gathered together and pitched by the valley of Elah and set the battle in array against the Philistines. And the Philistines stood on a mountain on the one side, and Israel stood on a mountain on the other side, and there was a valley between them. And there went out a champion out of the camp of the Philistines named Goliath of Goth, whose height was 6 cubits and a span. To translate that, he would have been maybe a little over 9 foot tall, which is absolutely massive, by the way. So, he would have, in those times, he would have been considered a giant, because most people don't stand that nearly that tall. And people today don't stand nearly that tall. But yeah, Goliath was a huge, huge man. And he had a helmet of brass upon his head, and he was armed with a coat of mail, and the weight of the coat was 5,000 shekels of brass. So, pretty heavy. He had greaves of brass upon his legs, and a target of brass between his shoulders. And the staff of his spear was like a weaver's beam, and his spear's head weighed 600 shekels of iron, and one bearing a shield went before him. So, once again, huge. And again, like I said, he was a big man. And he stood and cried upon the armies of Israel, and said unto them, Why are ye come out to set your battle in array? Am I not a Philistine, and ye servants to Saul? Choose you a man for you, and let him come down to me. If he be able to fight with me and to kill me, then will we be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then shall ye be our servants and serve us. And the Philistine said, I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man, that we may fight together. When Saul and all his Israel heard those words of the Philistine, they were dismayed and greatly afraid. Now David was the son of Ephrathite of Bethlehem, Judah. Sorry, keep getting tongue tied. Whose name was Jesse, and he had 8 sons. And the man went among men for an old man in the days of Saul. And 3 eldest sons of Jesse went and followed Saul to battle. And the names of his 3 sons that went to battle were Eliab, the firstborn, and the next to him, Abinadab, and the third, Shammah. Like I said, if I do butcher any of these names, I am sorry. And David was the youngest, and 3 eldest followed Saul. But David went and returned from Saul to feed his father's sheep at Bethlehem. And the Philistine drew near morning and evening, and presented himself 40 days. And Jesse said unto David his son, Take now for thy brethren the ephah of this parched corn and these 10 loaves, and run to the camp to thy brethren, and carry these 10 cheeses unto the captain of their 1,000, and look how thy brethren fare, and take their pledge. Now Saul and they and all the men of Israel were in the valley of Elah, fighting with the Philistines. And David rose up early in the morning and left the sheep with a keeper, and took and went as Jesse had commanded him. And he came to the trench as the host was going forth to the fight, and shouted for the battle. For Israel and the Philistines saluted his brethren. For the one who has joined me, we are reading in 1 Samuel chapter 17. I am currently on verse 22. And David left his carriage in the hand of the keeper of the carriage, and ran into the army, and came and saluted his brethren. And as he talked with them, behold, there came up a champion of the Philistine of Gath, Goliath by name, out of the armies of the Philistines, and spake according to the same words, and David heard them. And all the men of Israel, when they saw the man, fled from him, and were sore afraid. And the men of Israel said, Have ye seen this man that is come up? Surely to defy Israel is he come up, and it shall be that the man who killeth him, the king will enrich him with great riches, and will give him his daughter, and make his father's house free in Israel. And David spake to the men that stood by him, saying, What shall be done to the man that killeth this Philistine, and taketh away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should defy the armies of the living God? And the people answered him after this manner, saying, So shall it be done to the man that killeth him. And Eliab his eldest brother heard when he spake unto the men, and Eliab's anger was kindled against David, and he said, Why camest thou down hither? And with whom hast thou left those few sheep in the wilderness? I know thy pride and the naughtiness of thine heart, for thou art come down that thou mightest see the battle. And David said, What have I now done? Is there not a cause? And he turned from him toward another, and spake after the same manner. And the people answered him again after the former manner. And when the words were heard which David spake, they rehearsed them before Saul, and he sent for him. And David said to Saul, Let no man's heart fail because of him. Thy servant will go and fight with this Philistine. And Saul said unto David, Thou art not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for thou art but a youth, and he a man of war from his youth. And David said unto Saul, Thy servant kept his father's sheep, and there came a lion and a bear, and took a lamb out of the flock. And I went after him, and smote him, and delivered it out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard, and smote him, and slew him. Thy servant slew both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he hath defied the armies of the living God. David said, moreover, The Lord that delivered me out of the paw of the lion and out of the paw of the bear, me out of the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said unto David, Go, and the Lord be with thee. And Saul armed David with his armor, and he put an helmet of brass upon his head. Also he armed him with a coat of mail. And David girded his sword upon his armor, and he essayed to go, for he had not proved it. And David said unto Saul, I cannot go with these, for I have not proved them. And David put them off. And he took his staff in his hand, and chose him 5 smooth stones out of the brook, and put them in the shepherd's bag which he had, even in a scrip. And his sling was in his hand, and he drew near to the Philistine. Now, this is actually a rather interesting part, because David knew he only needed 1 stone to take out Goliath. But the question is, why did he grab 5? Not everybody knows, but Goliath actually had 4 brothers. And because of that, David was like, if I'm going to use 1 on Goliath, if his 4 brothers attack, I'll use 1 on each of them. But luckily for David, he didn't have to use the other 4 stones. All right, let's continue. And the Philistine came on and drew near unto David, and the man that bare the shield went before him. And when the Philistine looked about and saw David, he disdained him, for he was but a youth, and ruddy, and of fair countenance. And the Philistine said unto David, Am I a dog, that thou comest to me with staves? And the Philistine cursed David by his gods. And the Philistine said to David, Come to me, and I will give thy flesh unto the fowls of the air, and to the beasts of the field. Then said David to the Philistine, Thou comest to me with a sword, and with a spear, and with a shield, but I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defied. This day will the Lord deliver thee into mine hand, and I will smite thee, and take thine head from thee. And I will give this carcass of the host of the Philistines this day unto the fowls of the air, and to the wild beasts of the earth, that all the earth may know that there is a God in Israel. And all this assembly shall know that the Lord saveth not with the sword and spear, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands. And it came to pass, when the Philistine arose and came and drew nigh to meet David, that David hasted and ran toward the army to meet the Philistine. And David put his hand in his bag, and took thence a stone, and slang it, and smote the Philistine in his forehead, that the stone sunk into his forehead. He fell upon his face to the earth. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and with a stone, and smote the Philistine, and slew him. But there was no sword in the hand of David. Therefore David ran and stood upon the Philistine, and took his sword, and drew it out of the sheath thereof, and slew him, and cut off his head therewith. And when the Philistines saw their champion was dead, they fled. And which is said was a very young man. He was youth. He was probably one of the smaller guys in Israel's army. And when the Philistines saw this kid take out their strongest warrior, you can imagine how scared they were. They're like, if this kid can do this, what can the rest of the army do? So it is rather interesting that what their reaction was when they saw their strongest warrior get taken out like that. All right, let's continue. And the men of Israel and of Judah arose and shouted and pursued the Philistines until thou come to the valley and to the gates of Ekron. And the wounded of the Philistines fell down by the way to Sharaim, even to Gath and to Ekron. And the children of Israel returned from chasing after the Philistines, and they spoiled their tents. And David took the head of the Philistine and brought it to Jerusalem, but he put his armor in his tent. And when Saul saw David go forth against the Philistine, he said unto Abner, the captain of the host, Abner, whose son is this youth? Abner said, As thy soul liveth, O king, I cannot tell. The king said, Inquire thou whose son is stripling is. And as David returned from the slaughter of the Philistine, Abner took him and brought him before Saul, the head of the Philistine in his hand. And Saul said to him, Whose son art thou, young man? And David answered, I am the son of thy servant Jesse of Bethlehem. This is one of my honestly favorite events in the Bible, because as you know, David would later on go to become king of Israel. He would take over after Saul was defeated. But before that, he would actually become extremely good friends with Saul's son Jonathan. And Jonathan was actually willing to give up his throne because Jonathan was next in line to become king. But Jonathan was willing to give up his throne to David. After this event, the Israelites started really, really love David. And they wanted him to take over. And Jonathan knew that the Israelites preferred David. He wasn't upset about it. He said he really liked David. He was friends with them. So he was willing to give up his throne to David. Of course, Saul was not at all happy about that when he found out. So, which is why Saul ended up actually dying eventually, and he fell from grace because he turned against God, because God wanted David to become king. And Saul would later, like I said, fall from grace, and David would end up taking over as king of Israel. But David was a great king. He ended up being a great king. Yes, he made some major mistakes while king, but he was an absolute amazing king. Now, his son Solomon, on the other hand, was even better. Like I talked about yesterday in my devotional yesterday, Solomon ended up becoming the wisest king of all time. He also ended up becoming one of the richest, because that's what Solomon had asked for was wisdom, which is why God granted him all these other great things. He started off as a shepherd. David did, just a young shepherd, but would go on to later become a great king. But those that missed it, what I mentioned earlier, one of the reasons why people were so astonished by David taking out Goliath is due to how huge Goliath was. Because, like the Bible states, Goliath was, I don't know, where was it at? He was basically a little over 9 foot tall. His height was 6 cubits in a span. And those who don't know what a cubit was, cubit's about from here to here, which was about 13, 14 inches. I don't remember the exact measurement. But in that measurement, Goliath would have been about, said maybe a little over 9 foot tall, which is absolutely astonishingly huge. Of course, people thankfully don't get that big today. But back then, people were absolutely massive. And Goliath's brothers were also quite large themselves. Which is like why I said why David grabbed 5 stones. He knew he only needed 1 for Goliath, but he grabbed 4 just in case his brothers decided to attack. But that's my phone. But thankfully, they didn't, and they took off running. Like I said, they just took this small child, basically, just took out Goliath. Now, David may not have been small. He was maybe 15, 16 years old, somewhere in that range. Because he would said he would have been a youth. He would have been quite young. But still, this young kid took out this massive giant, which is absolutely astonishing to just imagine witnessing that, being on Israel's army and seeing this kid go out there and take out the man that everybody was terrified of. Because Israelites were absolutely terrified of the Philistines, especially this particular one, due to his size. And this kid basically, sorry about that. I don't know what that was about. But this kid basically goes out there and takes him out. And they're like, okay. So that, which of course gave the Israelites their courage back. Like, all right, this guy's taken out. We are now filled with courage. So we're going to go chase after the Philistines as they flee. Once they come back, and Saul's like, okay, who was this? Who is this kid? I mean, who is he? So he has his people bring David to him. He's like, all right, whose son are you? Like, who are you? Because Saul was probably even curious, like, I want to get to know who this kid is. This kid is extremely brave youth who goes in there and fights for God. I mean, we are all sitting back here terrified of this massive man, and this kid's like, I'll find him, and goes out and takes him out like it was nothing. So to imagine sitting there witnessing that would be astounding to have witnessed that. So if anybody does have any questions about anything else, or if y'all want me to do another live, I would absolutely love to. Or else specific in the Bible, or hear about anything in the Bible. If you just happen to have any questions about pretty much anything, I don't get into politics. That's one thing I will not do. I will not talk about politics. But if you have any questions about me, I'm maybe willing to answer them depending on what it is. If anybody's wondering, like the picture I showed talking about this stream, it's an old picture. It's from, I think, about about 2 years ago. That was me, of course, without the beard, and the cat I had. His name was Stormy. He was my cat. He passed away last year, sadly. But if you do have any questions about me, about who I am, I might be willing to answer them. Just do me a favor. I'm not going to get too personal, but if you want to know a little bit more about me, I may be willing to answer some of these questions. Or like I said, if you have any questions about stuff in the Bible, or if you want me to read anything specific in the Bible, just ask, and I'll be willing to. I'll see if I can answer them. If I don't know the answer, I will look it up, and I'll research it, and I'll try my best to answer your questions the best way I can. For instance, if you want my thoughts on something specific in the Bible, like what are my thoughts on this, what are my thoughts on that, I'll be more than happy to answer them. So please ask. Don't just feel free to ask any questions you want to ask. And just like I said, ask. But I've really enjoyed doing this live stream. I would love to do another one eventually. Because honestly, I love reading the Bible, and I love, trying to get closer to God, and try to strengthen my walk with God. That's one reason why I do these daily devotionals. Another reason, the main reason I do these devotionals like this is I'm trying to reach somebody, hoping that somebody who's maybe struggling with their walk with God, or they want to get closer, or they want to know certain things. Maybe someone who's struggling, say, mentally, like I have in the past. I've had mental health issues. I'm not afraid to admit it. I have had them in the past, but I've gotten a lot better. One reason is of course, my walk with God, trying to get strong with that, and the job I have right now is really, really helped because having a great environment does really help. The church I go to is an amazing church. My Sunday school teacher is awesome. I get along really well with him. My pastor at my church is an amazing pastor. He truly, truly cares about the people in the church and stuff like that. Like I said, you if you struggle with your mental health, it does help honestly going to church more, getting closer to people in your church, and putting yourself in a healthy environment really, really helps with mental health issues. Like I said, with my church, my job, which I absolutely love, I have a lot of fun where I do work. Um, Stuff like that really does help with mental health. But I'm hoping, like I was saying, I'm really hoping to reach somebody. I said maybe they'll scrolling through my videos or like on TikTok where I post as well, or on YouTube. Come by my own videos and just sit there and watch it, and maybe they hear something, and maybe like, you know what, I want to know who this God guy is. I want to know who Jesus is, and they start researching more. They start going to church. That's what I want. I want to reach somebody and hopefully lead someone to God. That is my ultimate mission, is to reach as many people as I can, and like I said, hopefully get somebody to accept God in their lives. That is what I really, really want. Which is why, like I said, why I do these daily devotionals. And one of the reasons why I want to do these live streams more, I do want to do these every now and then. So said, let me know if you want me to do another one. Is hopefully somebody will, another person will join us, and maybe they'll want to ask a question. I did have one person join me with this. Actually, was my Sunday school teacher, which is awesome. So thank you for saying hi. Um, but I do hope maybe in the future I will get more people joining, and you can ask questions. Said feel free to ask as many questions as possible, and I'll do my best to answer them. But I do want to thank y'all for joining me with this daily devotional. I will hopefully be able to post this on my main page. That way somebody else can watch it maybe later on. But this is actually a lot of fun. So I love reading the Bible. I love talking to people about God, which is, I have fun with this. I have fun talking to God. I have fun doing stuff like that. I look at it this way. I see Jesus as my best friend. I talk to him all the time. And when you talk to God, you don't, I've said it before in some other videos, but when you do talk to God, you don't necessarily have to bow your head, close your eyes. You can talk to God like he's standing right there in front of you, or sitting maybe right beside you. You just talk to him. You can talk to him about anything. He loves to hear from you. So please, I ask you, if you are struggling at all with any type of mental health or other issues, talk to God more. Try to get closer. Talk to somebody that knows you. Talk to people that you know care. Like talk to a pastor. Go to school. Talk to your Sunday school teacher. Just talk to somebody. It helps. Trust me. I know from experience. Talking about it helps. Talking to people and trying your best to get closer to God, it truly, truly does help. All right, folks. Time for our prayer. Dear most kind and heavenly Father, dear Lord, please help this video reach somebody that may need to watch it. Be with all those out there that are struggling with any type of mental health or physical health. To show them that you're there, God, that you're still with them. Obvious, God, that you're there, and that they'll